Hello, it's the March 7th, 2022, and I have some thoughts on the Virgo-Sagittarius square energy. So, is this still recording? Yeah, okay. The energy of the square, this is something that happens between two signs that view the world very differently, make decisions very differently, use the world and move through the world very differently, and that's why it causes tension between them, because it's not only that they fundamentally don't get how the other operates, which is similar to the quincunx energy, but it's that they fundamentally disagree with how the other operates, and they don't think that it's right. And that's where it causes tension, because if you have a square in your own birth chart between squaring signs, you're going to think, okay, like I want to do this or I want to have this, but then you're going to have an inner conflict about how to go about it, because you have this part of yourself that's like, let's do it this way. It's obviously the right way. It's obviously the best way. And then you have this other part of yourself, which is the other sign of that square, being like, no, that's not the right way. We need to do it this way. And then how do you figure out what's actually the best way and how we can make that happen in actuality and, kind of surmount that inner conflict to be able to do the thing. But, the good news is that for the most part, you don't actually need to surmount the conflict. The conflict is low-key. I feel like the conflict between squaring signs and when you have squares in your natal chart is something that, can never be fully, harmonized. It's always going to be a conflict. There's always going to be, let's say it transforms from being a conflict, an active conflict, to a, how do I want to say that? To an acceptance of disagreement, let's say like that. Like, okay, right, I'm just going to pretend I'm not seeing you, and I see that you're doing your thing. I'm just going to pretend I'm not seeing you and do my own thing, whatever kind of thing. As opposed to oppositions, which are also challenging energy. But I feel like these can be more so harmoniously integrated into the psyche and into your own personality when you have these in your birth chart compared to squares. Now, I do want to say personally, I have more oppositions than squares, and I feel like I've understood the nature of oppositions and how to work with them and through them quite well already, maybe more so than squares. So I'm also exploring this on a personal level. And I also want to acknowledge that there are out of sign squares in the natal chart that are possible, meaning squaring aspects that are not formed between signs that naturally square each other, but rather usually by signs that are naturally trining each other, so of the same element. And they still form a square, even though the elements would be telling you they're supposed to get along and everything, because of the degrees. One of the planets will be very late in the degrees and another will be very early in the degrees. And I do have this in my own birth chart as well. I have a very late Pisces moon at the last degree, an erratic degree, and I have very early Cancer placements, and so they form a square. And I'm not sure how that manifests just yet with how I'm talking about today, but I did want to acknowledge that as well. And yeah, I wanted to talk about the square of Virgo and Sagittarius. So as we know, Virgo is an earth sign, so very kind of literally, as it says, down to earth and all that kind of stuff. And also, Virgo, you can already see the conflict between these signs when I'm telling you that Virgo is the sign that focuses on the details of things the most, whilst Sagittarius is the sign that focuses on seeing the big picture the most. So you can see where they're starting to have a conflict here, because Sagittarius is let's look at the big picture. Let's take into account this whole thing. Well, Virgo is no, let's get down to the nitty gritty and look at oh, look, there's a comma missing in this sentence. And Sagittarius is that doesn't matter. And Virgo is how could you say that doesn't matter? That's foolish of you. That's irresponsible of you, blah, 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 right? And Virgo, being an earth sign, is a very logical and practical sign and energy, while Sagittarius, being a fire sign, it's a very excitable, exciting, passionate energy. Not that Virgos cannot be passionate, they are in their own personal way, but Okay, that's stop recording because I gotta fucking add it in my thing. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so Virgos can be passionate, obviously. I'm not saying that there aren't, but passion is very visceral to Sagittarius. They feel it in their soul. It's a big part of their life, and it's a big, like, it's their drive, literally. And so when making a decision, especially like a big life-changing decision or something like that, or, just like, what should I do in general, Virgo is going to ask themselves, okay, what is the smart, intelligent, logical thing to do? Well, Sagittarius will ask themselves, what is the most exciting option? What is the most fun thing to do about this? What is the option that can elevate my mind and help me experience more of the world and give me new experiences to learn from, and all those kinds of questions, right? Because we remember that Sagittarius is also ruled by Jupiter and a natural ruler of the ninth house. So all those things about belief systems and experiencing the world and having this like higher mindset is all linked to Sagittarius as well, which, goes hand in hand with this idea of like seeing the higher, like the bigger picture. Sagittarius is very focused on like, it's almost the 10th house, right? Which is the most public and collective house. And so, Sagittarius is thinks a lot about the world and the collective as a whole, and people in general, and human beings, like all of them. Whilst Virgo, it's not that they only think about themselves, obviously not, but they're going to focus on each one-on-one interaction that they get compared to Sagittarius. And so you can see that that's where they also kind of clash. And the thing is that, so we have established here that Sagittarius and Virgo have different goals, different missions, operate differently, make decisions differently, view the world differently, focus on different things, and view different things as being important, and value different things. But it's not just that, because when you just fundamentally don't understand someone, when you're meeting them or in a certain energy, like, you're going to try to figure it out. And then when you can't, and when you really just disagree with what they're doing and don't see how that's a good idea, you're going to start getting into the shadow. And the shadow of Virgo is being judgmental and highly critical. And the shadow of Sagittarius is being dogmatic and pretending that they're morally superior. And so what the potential of what could happen here between like a Virgo and a Capricorn, and I'm not just saying like between a Virgo and a Capricorn person, I'm saying like between your Virgo and your why did I say Capricorn? Oh my god, maybe I should, the next one squaring signs that I'm doing should be about Capricorn. But the danger that can happen between, and I'm just not just saying as like people, Virgo and a Sagittarius person, but like with your own Virgo and Sagittarius parts, especially if you have both of those signs in your natal chart highlighted. But so what can happen here is that they don't understand each other. They don't see how either of them, like the other, is doing something good or like is going to achieve good things, because their strategy doesn't make sense to the other. And so because of that, Virgo can be very, very judgmental of Sagittarius and how they're operating, and like, you're focused on the wrong things, you're childish, you're irresponsible, all those things, blah blah blah. And Sagittarius can be very dismissive of Virgo and just be like, oh, they're just so ignorant, they're just so like, they don't see the higher meaning of life, and I'm right and they're wrong, and they just don't see that because they're just stuck in their own world, but it's very obvious. And now none of those things are true, right? The thing about being judgmental, and then the thing about being morally superior. Now, obviously, there are people with Sagittarian energy who are like irresponsible and focused on the wrong things and only focused on the current experience, and Virgo people who are highly judgmental and critical because they are still living in the shadow of their own placements. And sometimes, I'm thinking when you're encountering that squaring energy within someone else, it could potentially lead to some breakthroughs if you actually, instead of being like, ew, they're just boring, or they're just a bad person, or they're just stupid, if that person actually takes the time to be like, well, why am I reacting so strongly to that? What's going on here? And do some self-reflection, that could actually be really beneficial for them, right? But I think that the way to work through squares is to just kind of accept that there is conflict and you'll never see eye to eye. And that doesn't have to be something so dramatic or something that you have to be disrespectful to each other about. You know what I mean? The more I'm thinking and talking about squares, the more I feel like that's part of the answer here. And I'm really wondering, I'm very curious if any of you have experience. I have Sagittarius placements. I don't have Virgo placements. So if any of you do have these squares, both of those energies in your birth chart, I'm very curious how that plays out for you and how you might have connected or related or resonated with what I'm saying today. I'm also curious about people's experiences of, as I said, acknowledging the conflict and accepting the conflict between squares and how that might show up for you, because it's something I'm like, that's just bubbling up within me. And I'm also going to try to do that with my own squares energy. It's not like something that comes up that often for me though, because I don't have that many. And maybe if they're out of sight, they're less prominent. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm not saying this to be like, this is the answer and I know it 100%. This is like an idea I'm suggesting that I think has some value and would be interesting to try. And that's also why I'm interested to know your experiences if you have tried it, and definitely let us know. But yeah, I think those were my thoughts on the Virgo-Sagittarius square, and that came to me in my mind, and I just hit record on my phone app, and I have no idea if I'm going to post this. Maybe I will. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And if I do post this somewhere and you're a human being other than myself who's hearing this and you have listened to this, thank you. Love you so much. Bye-bye.